Hello, and welcome to episode 4.3, the October 2nd, 2024 Goldenrod edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat, the podcast that covers the arts in northern Chautauqua County, sponsored by the 1891 Fredonia Opera House. My name is Tom Laughlin, and I'm your host as we bring you news and information about arts events at the Opera House and around the region, including interviews with artists and creators across the county. Take a ride around the county this time of year and you are sure to spot one of the most ubiquitous yet misunderstood plants in the region, the goldenrod. When in bloom, it's an undeniable sign that summer is over and fall is in full swing. Contrary to popular belief, however, goldenrod does not cause any sort of allergic reaction. Unlike ragweed, the pollen in goldenrod is sticky and not prone to become airborne. This makes it one of the most important pollinators in nature. Bees are extremely attracted to goldenrod for its sticky and sweet nectar. Goldenrod is also used as a medicinal herb in the form of tinctures and teas for such conditions as urinary tract infections, kidney cleansing, and inflammations. So the next time you have the opportunity, wade into that field of goldenrod and enjoy the splash of vibrant yellow, the scent of the flowers, and pick a few for some late afternoon tea, perhaps with some goldenrod honey. Nice way to spend an autumn day.
You'll always find me near the man with the horn. Find me there from dark until dawn, for that's the place where music is born. Divine, just listen while he takes his soul.
It's a musical homecoming on Thursday, October 3rd, for a Fredonia native whose fondness for the great American songbook and the music of the 1940s, along with a certain trombone player, has led her to become a top nightclub and concert act in clubs from Las Vegas to New York. Calabria Foti and her husband Bob McChesney will be appearing in an unusual Thursday evening concert at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House entitled From Bebop to Broadway. Here's Calabria talking about her time in Fredonia and her musical career. Joining me now is the local girl who made good. It's Calabria Foti from Fredonia, and she's coming to the 1891 Fredonia Opera House on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7 p.m. So Calabria, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Tom. I am so excited about being back in Fredonia with my husband, whom I met at Fredonia College so many years ago. I won't tell you how many, but you can figure it out. You can do the math. But we're so excited to be back there and to perform at the Opera House. This is a dream come true. It truly is.
Well, tell us a little bit about that background now. Yeah, how did you and your husband is Bob McChesney? He's coming with you. He's a celebrated trombonist. And how did you two meet?
We met. I kind of stalked him a little bit. I was practicing my violin in Mason Hall, in the old part of Mason Hall, if you know Mason Hall. And it was the summertime and all the windows were open. And so in that corridor, that courtyard, you could hear other players in their own practice rooms. And I heard this beautiful trombone playing down the hall. And I said, gosh, who is that? And I because I knew the trombone players at the college, because as a high school student, my wonderful teacher, Mr. Charles Joseph, saved my life as a performer, and he just changed the trajectory of my career altogether. So I just owe everything to him. But he had me at the college a lot, playing in the orchestra. And I was studying with him, of course, and doing chamber music as a high school student. So I knew a lot of the trombone players, and I knew their playing. And of course, my dad was a trombone player and did teach trombone and theory at the school too, prior to my being there, though. And so I knew players, and I said, who is this trombone player? I don't know who this is. So I took a little break from practicing and walked down the hall and looked in the little window, and I saw this curly hair and heard his beautiful playing. And that was it. After that, I said, I got to get to know who this person is. And he was not a music major at the time. He was a business major and did graduate from the business school at Fredonia. But he did play in the Fredonia Jazz Ensemble, which was a student-led ensemble. And I think it still is, right?
Well, we now have a full-blown jazz program. So a lot of what was used to be a student-run, the Fredonia Jazz Ensemble, has now been incorporated into the curriculum.
Excellent. That's so good. I'm so happy, because Fredonia is such a great college. They have the great, famous Tonmeister program, which is, led to so many wonderful careers that people that we know came out of the Tonmeister program. So I'm really glad they have a full-blown jazz curriculum there. And the esteemed faculty is going to join us on stage at the Opera House next Thursday. So we're really delighted about that.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So, when you do interviews for the general public, you usually talk about yourself and stuff, but I'm taking the opportunity, because you're local and it's a local podcast, to kind of get you to talk about some local things that you might not ordinarily talk about on your bigger interviews. And one of the things, of course, I'm most interested in is, growing up in Fredonia. What are some of your memories of the village? How do you remember it as a young person growing up?
It was an idyllic way to grow up, I thought, because you had the beauty of the small town and the rural environment, but because of the presence of the state university, I never felt isolated one bit. We were getting concerts from major artists at the school at the time, and I was deeply into jazz as a kid, and also classical music, and then its proximity to Buffalo. So there was culture and music and art and all kinds of great lectures and plays and theater. I was just in heaven growing up there. And then I got to ride my bike, down Chautauqua Road and pick apples or whatever and play outside. And it was a wonderful way to grow up. I was in heaven. I particularly liked the little library downtown. I would ride my bike. We lived up on the hill off of Route 20 on Pine Drive, and I would ride my bike down and go through the record collections and at the library, take these records out of the library and listen to these symphonies and practice my violin parts for all state and that kind of thing. So it was just a great way to grow up.
What, you didn't really start off with the violin. You got that a little later, in your teenage years, I think. Is that correct? What drew you to the violin?
Well, first of all, my parents were both musicians, and I heard lots and lots of music in my house growing up. And my first instrument was guitar. I was learning guitar, and I started writing songs as a little kid, 8 or 9 years old. I was writing little pop songs, and everybody played an instrument in my family, and we sang, parts. My dad would say, okay, you sing this note, and then we're going to sing in harmony and that kind of thing. My mom played a beautiful piano. So there's all kinds of music growing up. But I started violin in the 4th grade as part of the school music program. But at the same time, I was in love with pop music of the day, the 40s, and Frank Sinatra, Peggy Lee, Dave Pell Octet. I just poured through my parents' record collection all the time. Mel Torme, every time, Irby Green, all these trombone records and stuff. So I knew a lot about different kinds of music. At least I was involved and interested in learning a lot about different kinds of music, because it's all music to me, classical Aaron Copland to Hindemith to Bernstein to, it's all jazz to me, it's just creativity. And so I was studying violin in school and singing in the choirs as part of the school programs and so forth. And then on the weekends, I would play with my mom and dad and their little band, their little combo. And we did lots of gigs all over Western New York. And it was just a great thing. I would bring tunes to my mom. Can we do this tune? And she would say, what key? And we'd work it out. And then I'd have the opportunity to play it or sing it on that very weekend. So it was just a really wonderful musical education between the school and my family. So
now eventually you sort of transitioned over. Obviously, you became a vocalist, and and the style, of course, is a 40s style. I've listened to a number of your recordings that are available, and it's just got this such a nice sultry feel to it, but it's very 40s. And when did you decide to make the flip from actually just like playing an instrument to becoming primarily a vocalist?
Well, it's when I met Bob McChesney. He was a trombonist, an amazing player, and we both transitioned to Los Angeles. After a couple of years, I was a assistant concertmaster in the Florida Orchestra in Tampa. That was my first job. And he went on the road after he graduated with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra with Buddy Morrow as the leader. And he did that for about a year or so. And we kept in touch. And he said, I'm going to LA. And I said, oh, well, let me get through this. I had a couple of commitments in Florida. And I said, then I will come out to LA and see what that's like. And, when you grow up in the East Coast, especially a small town like Fredonia, Los Angeles is like another planet. Nobody thinks about it. But I did follow him there. And all of a sudden, I realized he's got all these other skill sets. I'm getting to your question. It's a long answer for a short question. But we built a studio, and I was doing demos as a singer and writing R&B tunes and pop tunes and stuff, trying to get somewhere as a singer-songwriter. And then at some point, I decided to go back to my roots, which was the 40s, music of the 40s. And it's Bob McChesney who made all that possible, because not only is he a great engineer, recording engineer, he's a wonderful producer. And then, of course, he plays beautiful trombone solos on many of the tracks, and he arranged the strings. And so all of the recordings he's responsible for. And I decided, I kind of grew up. I said, I want to honor the songwriters and the singers of the 40s, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., all my heroes, Judy Garland. And that was my first record, When a Woman Loves a Man. And it kind of took off from there. And then people really liked how I sounded. I got a lot of good feedback from, they liked my jazz singing, but they really liked the sultry ballads. And so the second record, A Lovely Way to Spend an Evening, really kind of got me on the map as far as radio play internationally. And then we went from there. I did In the Still of the Night, which is a collection of Cole Porter music, and it's very intimate, and it was done with a chamber band, cellist, and Gene Bertoncini from New York on guitar. And it's mostly ballads and kind of bosses, and just kind of the intimate side of Cole Porter. And then Prelude to a Kiss was my last solo album. And meanwhile, Bob has his own recording career, and his last record was his release was called Come Sunday, which is an album of hymns that we all grew up with, but done in a jazzy, gospel-y way, and it's very cool. And then we did the last record we did as co-artists, our first record as co-artists, called Together for Christmas. So it's a combination of vocal songs and instrumental and a couple of originals that I wrote for the album, and it's done very well. So we just keep doing stuff, but it's his anyway. To answer your question, how did we start recording? It's because of Bob said, I'd like to feature you. I'd like to showcase you in whatever songs you want to do, and let's start a record company. So.
Well, he made the right move.
Thank you.
He made the right move.
So much. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm a gentleman of a certain age who likes a certain type of music, and I think you fall into that category for me.
Exactly.
When I turn to classic movies and I hear all that great stuff from the 40s and the movies of that era, it was like, and I missed it by that much, but it's wonderful to see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. Yeah. It's that I'm glad that we were in LA at the time we were in LA, and we kind of caught the end of that era, with the beautiful movie scores and CDs and stuff. And we've been fortunate enough to play with some of the greatest writers of all time. John Williams, Lalo Schifrin, Johnny Mandel.
Yeah, that's all.
Jeremy Lubbock, these are George Calandrelli. These are like, just the most beautiful orchestras on the best sound stages with the greatest arrangers of all time. So we were really lucky. We were really fortunate.
Yeah. So you're coming in doing a program called Bebop to Broadway, and you have thrown in a number of your albums some really interesting Broadway tunes. I listened to your recording of "This Nearly Was Mine" from South Pacific, which is, it was just lovely.
Thank you.
So what are you bringing for us? Can you give us a preview of what you're going to sing?
Well, we're going to have a little bit of everything. We've got some new arrangements of some fast jazz tunes. We're going to feature Bob, of course, because he's wonderful, and it's a little bit of everything. We're doing some film music, some bebop, of course, and some my jazzy takes on Broadway tunes, some from the albums. We're going to do "On the Street Where You Live," and I'm trying to think of everything else. One Note Samba. Let's see what else. Oh, a bunch of stuff. I've got some violin pieces that I'm going to do, and maybe we'll get the audience to sing along too.
Well,
I have one that they're going to sing along to. My friends, the McClennathons, who we were in a band together as teenagers in high school, Michael and Todd said, "We want to have you come in." And so I'm so delighted that they invited us in. And Michael told me about the Jazz Society and the Fredonia Jazz Festival. It's like, this is so awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Well, hopefully someday you'll join us for the Jazz Festival. I mean, I would really enjoy that, and I think the people at that run the Fredonia Jazz Society would probably love to have someone who, is a Fredonia native and come in and play.
Anytime, we'd love to come back.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let them know if they don't know already.
Okay.
Calabria, it was wonderful to talk to you. You're a very engaging performer, and I know that the Fredonia audience is going to just really eat you up when you come back. It's always nice to come home.
The feeling is so mutual. We can't wait. Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Calabria. See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Calabria Foti and Bob McChesney from Bebop to Broadway will be presented at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. That's tomorrow if you are listening to the podcast the day of its release, beginning at 7 p.m. Tickets are $25 for adults, $23 for members, and $10 for students, and will be available at the door. You can still get tickets online at www.fredopera.org or by calling the box office at 716-679-1891. The Chautauqua County History Lecture Series continues on Thursday, October 10th, 2024, with a presentation entitled Lafayette in Fredonia. The featured speaker, Mr. Chris Carosa, will offer some of the fascinating details of the Marquis de Lafayette's tour through Western New York, and in particular his late-night visit to Fredonia and Dunkirk in the summer of 1825 on his way to Boston. Mr. Carosa has written a book on General Lafayette's visit, among the many other projects he has accomplished throughout his career. My guest right now is Mr. Chris Carosa, and Chris will be coming to the 1891 Fredonia Opera House on Thursday, October 10th, 2024 at 7 p.m. He's going to deliver a lecture about Lafayette in Fredonia, and he's also going to be joined by the Darwin Barker Museum curator Max Walters and also county historian Todd Langworthy. But Chris is really the featured speaker. So Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom.
Let's get a little, I just want the listening audience to get a little background on you. You are a man of incredibly varied interests, and I don't know, which one to start with, but you've done any number of things. Could you give us a little bit of your background, and also while you're doing that, how you sort of got interested in Lafayette and Western New York?
Well, let me just give you a quick bullet list of my background to sort of give people a sense of what you're talking about. So, what have I done in my life? I am a trained astrophysicist who once was an AM disc jockey on a top-rated show, and I wrote a popular stage play that sold out, or that played for to sold-out crowds. I'm author of several books. By day, I am an investment advisor who has appeared nationally all over the place. I run a mutual fund that has done pretty well. By night, I am a writer. I'm a publisher of our local community newspaper. I've written several books to date, all nonfiction, but I am dabbling into fiction. And I am a publicly appointed historian for my town. I am the deputy historian. I do have an interest in history, particularly Western New York history, and I've written a series of books on Western New York history that includes this Lafayette book, the latest book, which I sort of accidentally fell into when I wrote an article for our local paper on the placement of a sign in our town indicating that Lafayette stopped there in his 1825 visit. That's the thing that really kicked this whole thing off.
Okay, let's get into the topic at hand, though, and that's the story of General Lafayette. And everybody who knows their American history knows that he was one of General George Washington's right-hand men during the Revolutionary War, and was accounted a great hero in the United States. I believe he was the last living general from the Revolutionary War before he passed, and he took this trip. He went all over the place. He was an incredibly well-traveled person, and everybody seemed to adore him. He was called America's Guests. Can you give us a background on just Lafayette himself and set the stage for this journey that he took?
Well, Lafayette, and I actually don't get into this in the book that much, but it is an interesting question. One of the reasons why I don't get into it is because so many other people are more expert on Lafayette as the person than I am. But his is a great story. You probably heard a little bit about him in school when they taught you about the Revolution, how important he was. But he came over as a teenager. He was a part of the aristocracy of France. He wanted to serve the American patriots side. Now, remember, at that time, France and England, they were kind of at odds. So it would be natural for the French government to support the Americans. However, he was married into this family that also had British aristocracy on its side. So I think if I remember correctly, might have been his stepfather or something like that, didn't want him to go. So being the rambunctious teenager that he was, he decided, okay, I'm not going to get official permission to go. I'm going to ask for forgiveness later on. So he used the money that he inherited to pay his own way into America. He came here. He wanted to be an officer. He wasn't allowed to be a high-ranking officer initially because any foreign troops that came in to help America were not given that but he really earned his stripes. He was injured at the Battle of Brandywine, where he met several leading characters, founding fathers who were very young at that time, his age, and made friends with them. He was critical in the Battle of Yorktown, and he was really adored by everybody he met. I don't know why, he just was, even to the extent where after the war, as the new American government had to make treaties with the Iroquois nations, he was one of the people who participated in that. And he was known as being very fair-minded. He treated everybody equally, and he was well liked by the Indians too. So everybody liked him. And when he came to America, it was a nostalgic phase. 1824 is actually when he arrived. It wasn't until June of 1825 when he came through Western New York. But that was right at the end of what's known as the era of good feelings. The 1820 presidential election was the only presidential election other than George Washington's re-election. 1820 was the only presidential election where there was no opponent. So this is what I mean. Era of good feelings. Everyone really was happy. They were glad. We're just getting over the War of 1812 and the subsequent economic depression that occurred after that. So we're gushing with happiness and togetherness, and now we're celebrating on the edge of celebrating the 50th anniversary of our nation's independence. There's still people alive who participated in that war, American Revolutionary War veterans. They're old. Think about how we treated World War II veterans about 10 or 20 years ago. I don't remember, when we realized that they weren't long for this world. That's the same way America treated the American Revolutionary War veterans when Lafayette was here. So there was all this excitement, and the fact that Lafayette just happened to be who he was, where he was, he embodied this togetherness, this commonality that all Americans had. And he was, if you could imagine a rock star tour in early America, it would be defined by what Lafayette did throughout the country. He went to all 24 states. He spent about 14 months going across the country. Everywhere he went, it was virtually the same story. So the Western New York story isn't that much different from the other stories that you hear as he traveled around the country. But what is interesting about Western New York, at least what I hope my readers will find out, is you'll recognize some of these names, some of these places. There's a familiarity that you'll have with the geography and all the things that I point out in the book. So it's a fun read. It's a fun read. You don't have to. I would say this. First of all, one of the things I discovered on my own tour, or reliving this tour, there's a lot of Lafayette fans out there.
Wow.
Way more than I thought, and which I'm very happy to find out. But I think if you don't start off as a Lafayette fan, if you just read for the history of Western New York that's contained in this book, by the end of the book, you'll become a Lafayette fan.
Well, I tell you, I perused your website in preparation for this interview, and you have any numbers of posts that sort of chronologically talk about his a trip through, and it's sort of eye-opening in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not as if I didn't know General Lafayette was important to the story of America, but by the same token, I mean, you're right. I mean, he had rock star status. Tell us a little bit, if you can, whatever you can. I don't want to ruin your lecture, obviously, but some little teasers about his day in Fredonia. And it wasn't actually a day, as I understand it.
No, at some point it became day. So here's the thing that Lafayette did. So nobody was sure if he would be able to stop at any of these locations. And all these places wanted the honor of having Lafayette stop there. If at least just to stop and wave. In Fredonia, they actually did a little bit more. Despite the hour of his arrival, they had a big, huge celebration, presentation, quote unquote dinner, reception, that sort of thing. but it occurred late at night, and it was it was fascinating because this was Lafayette. I think if you look at the entirety of Lafayette's travel just through Chautauqua County, starting with State Line and then ending with Dunkirk, he did everything possible to accommodate the people on the route, to wave, to recognize him. In the journals that were written afterwards by his traveling secretary, he says what Lafayette wants to do, and the impression I got is the people who were traveling with him, they just did whatever Lafayette told them to do, but they were kind of amazed about how just friendly he was to everybody. And they knew these are the people who knew Lafayette well. And they were amazed at how friendly Lafayette was and how friendly everybody else was to Lafayette. Here's the thing that's kind of amazing about his trip through Western New York. Again, like I said, they weren't sure. Nobody was sure if he was even taking that route, because originally Lafayette was supposed to take a boat from Erie to Buffalo, and
Right.
that fell through. So now he had to go on the road that wasn't quite a road. It was a road, but it wasn't the road that you would expect it to
Well,
be.
it's now the current Route 20, is it not?
Currently, it's Route 20. Yeah, I mean, I actually talk about the roads in the book.
Yes.
But the roads are important to know how Lafayette got from one place to the other. And the history of the roads are fascinating because they go back really to the time when humans, migrated following the departure of the glaciers, how they migrated into Western New York and then dispersed throughout Western New York. So they became those trails initially, but then our roads. And that was what Lafayette traveled on. And in particular, that road, the Buffalo and Erie Road is what it was called at that time. That was a main road used by settlers from Connecticut to settle in the Connecticut Reserve in what is now Ohio. But the trail was so bad that the settlers waited until it was winter so they could go on the ice of Lake Erie, near shore, not too far out, but near shore, because the trail was just notoriously bad. Your wagons would break down, all that kind of stuff. Well, luckily, it was improved by the time Lafayette came. But here's the thing. Lafayette made a promise to the city of Boston that he would be there for the ceremonial laying of the cornerstone of the Bunker Hill Monument, June 17th of 1825. So he entered Western New York on June 3rd. He essentially had 2 weeks to make it to Boston. So he went bam, 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 bam. That's why when he stopped at Fredonia, he stopped there really late at night. He probably, I guess you would say, he would pull an all-nighter. He came into Westfield first and, said hello to, there were some things that went on in Westfield, but then the big thing was in Fredonia. After that, it was off to Dunkirk, and Dunkirk was, again, here's another thing. We think of these places the way we think of today. Is that, oh, maybe Fredonia is not as big as Dunkirk. So why did he stop at Fredonia? Why did he even stop at Westfield? Westfield is just a blink of the eye. Well, actually, Westfield was a pretty big spot back then because it was an intersection both of this road, but also the Portage Road, which went from Lake Erie to Lake Chautauqua Lake, which was used for a while. I mean, the French were the ones who set that one up. So that's why Westfield was important. Fredonia is also important. Dunkirk was nothing. It was barely a port at that point. It was forest right up until the shore. By the time he left Fredonia, he arrived at Dunkirk, and the sun was just starting to rise.
Yeah. That was the
So,
most fascinating thing to me. That was that these guys, like you said, they pulled all-nighters and they slept in the carriages in the time that they were traveling. They never stopped at hotels. They just kept on going, stopped, had the event, got back in the carriage and kept on going. It was just fascinating to me that they could do that.
and remember, they don't necessarily, well, they were following people. There were committees from each of these groups. So Westfield had a committee that went down to State Line to pick up Lafayette from the Erie Committee, and then they drove led them back on these roads slash trails, paths, whatever you want to call them. They weren't lit up. Now that Buffalo to Erie thing that passed through Westfield, that was a pretty main trail, so that was going to be obvious. But and then on to Fredonia, same thing. Fredonia to Dunkirk, that's a road less traveled. In the middle of the night, there's no lights at there. By the way, here's a bit of a spoiler alert that probably people already know. There was no gas lighting when Lafayette was there. A lot of historical reports say, Lafayette came and was greeted by all these gas lights. Well, the gas lights didn't really occur until about 3 or 4 months, 5 months maybe after Lafayette was here. So he didn't see any gas lights. There were candle lights, there were bonfires. People did have light from that side, but certainly along the paths, there weren't a lot of houses either along those paths from Fredonia to Dunkirk. So they were going in the dark. And I think it was, I don't think it was like the best of travel. There might have been like a bogginess or mire there that just made it a little bit more difficult.
Wow. It's a fascinating story. Chris, and I know that you're probably going to shed the light that we all need a little bit more on Lafayette's visit to the region, and it should be fun to see next summer all these 200th anniversary events. So thank you for coming on the podcast and letting us know. And I think the audiences are really going to be enlightened, shall we say, and they'll enjoy the lecture very much because I know in just doing the research, I found it all fascinating. But to come and listen to you talk and the other two gentlemen who are going to be there, it should be a really nice lecture. So good luck with that. We look forward to seeing you at the Opera House and watching your presentation.
Well, thanks, Tom. And I also look very much forward to seeing everybody there and hearing the kind of questions that they might have that show what they're interested in.
Great. Thanks, Chris. We'll be talking to you. Bye-bye. Lafayette in Fredonia will be presented on Thursday, October 10th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Also featured in the event are Barker Museum curator Max Walters and county historian Todd Langworthy. Admission is free. Donations will be gratefully accepted. Here is the arts calendar for the next 2 weeks. The cinema series at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House continues with the film My Penguin Friend on Friday, October 4th, and again on Tuesday, October 8th at 7:30 p.m. Starring Jean Reno and Adriana Barraza, the film tells the story of a fisherman who rescues a penguin from the ocean and the bond formed between them. Tickets are sold only at the door and are $7 for adults, $6.50 for members, and $5 for students. The art exhibit Traditions Interrupted continues at the Kathy and Jesse Marion Art Gallery now through November 22nd. The exhibit features works by several artists exploring the methods used by artists to conflate contemporary ideas with traditional art and craft. You can check out the Kathy and Jesse Marion Art Gallery website for hours of operation. 2 School of Music events will take place in the coming week. Cellist Natasha Farney, one half of the Ecstasis Duo, will give a recital on Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 at 8 p.m. in Rausch Recital Hall. Also, the Brass Chamber Ensembles and the Brass Choir will perform on Monday, October 14th at 8 p.m., also in Rausch Recital Hall. Both events are free and open to the public. And finally, the student dance organization Orchesis will present their fall showcase on Friday, October 4th at 7:30 p.m. and again on Saturday, October 5th at 2 p.m. in the Bartlett Theater. Tickets are $10 general admission and can be purchased at the Fredonia campus box office at www.fredonia.edu/tickets or by calling the box office Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 716-673-3501. And remember, if you have an arts event you'd like mentioned on the arts calendar, please contact us at the Opera House at 716-679-1891 or email us at operahouse@fredopera.org. Please give us at least a month's notice in advance of your event to ensure a timely listing. The Live at the Met series for the fall kicks off this Saturday, October 5th at 1 p.m. with the production of Les Contes d'Hoffmann. It will be followed on October 19th by a contemporary opera entitled Grounded, and then concludes on November 23rd with Puccini's Tosca. Professor Don Marrazzo of the School of Music's Voice faculty gives us a quick peek into each of these upcoming productions. It's a great pleasure now to be joined by Professor Don Marrazzo. Don is assistant professor of voice, and he's also the producer of the Hillman Opera over at the School of Music. So welcome, Don.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for having me back. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. And I know this is going to be a pretty rapid fire bang, bang, bang interview because we're going to try and discuss all three of the operas coming up this fall season at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House, the Live at the Met series. So I think that's why I'm talking so fast.
This is a lot to fit in a short period of time, right?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So let's take them one at a time and just get rolling here. We've got the first one coming on October 5th. That's they're all, by the way, they're all on Saturday, 1 p.m. So this is October 5th. It's Les Contes d'Hoffmann. My French is not that good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Tales of Hoffmann. It's known as in English. And so you're on. Give us the rundown here.
So it's a wonderful piece, actually. It's a story about a poet named Hoffmann who tells stories about three tragic tales of his love affairs. And it was composed by Jacques Offenbach, and it's often presented in three acts. The opera is actually uncompleted, but it's often presented in three acts, each act with a different story. And in addition to Hoffmann and the ladies of his loves who are become unrequited in the end. The opera also features Niklaus, and that's a muse of the arts who follows Hoffmann throughout the opera and tries to save him from his lovesick antics, so to speak. So the opera really explores, I think, a struggle between human love and an artist's commitment, dedication to their work. And sadly for Hoffmann, he loses each of the women that he loves, but he gains poetic inspiration instead, which is not maybe, it's not ideal, but maybe for a poet, it's just as rewarding in some ways. So Offenbach was a German-born French composer, cellist, and impresario, and he's remembered mostly in terms of opera. He's really mostly remembered for the Tales of Hoffmann, which remains part of the standard operatic repertory, but was very renowned and celebrated for his nearly 100 operettas. And so he was a very powerful influence in the world of operetta, certainly on Johann Strauss II and Arthur Sullivan of the famous Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. So he was an extremely important figure in the operetta movement. And like I said, the Tales of Hoffmann is absolutely a standard part of the operatic repertory in houses now. So.
Now I understand that the opera, if I remember right, is sort of a kind of it's a tragic comedy in a sense. There's some very, very humorous parts to it as well, and I don't want the audience to get the idea it's all
No, it's very like melodramatically tragic. It's that kind of thing where it's like this, oh, woe is me, kind of my love is unrequited, this kind of thing. But there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor, and it's very clever, and there are wonderful scenes. There's one of the characters that he falls in love with, Olympia, turns out to be a mechanical doll, and so she has this very virtuosic aria, which the doll song, which is extraordinarily complex and always a showstopper. The music is beautiful, and it absolutely has many, many comedic moments as well. It's this kind of woe is me tragedy kind of thing. But
well, I think that what makes it a lot of fun, as I recall,
absolutely.
it may be a little bit long, but you're not going to sit there and just be, overawed by powerful
Absolutely,
operatic emotion. You're going,
no. And because also because Offenbach has, like I said, he had such an influence as a composer of operetta. There is a tremendous amount. There's some incredibly lush, lyrical, rich music in the score. Belle Nuit is a very famous duet between two of the female characters in the show, and well, between one of the female characters and Niklaus, who is actually it is a female role, but a pants role, meaning it's a female in disguise as dressed
oh,
as a male character, and it's an incredibly beautiful duet. And I think actually most people know it, and they don't even know it until they hear it. But it's used in a lot of advertisements and marketing campaigns, and it's a very famous tune. So they're absolutely memorable pieces of music that people will know that they don't even know they know. And then when they see it, they'll be like, "I know this. I just didn't know it was from the Tales of Hoffmann." So it's a
very.
wonderful piece. Wonderful.
Now the singers, they really got. There's all kinds of differences. There's a multiple casts in
Yes.
this one. The one we're going to see does feature Benjamin
Yes.
Bernheim as Hoffmann. He's a tenor. What about
Yeah,
him?
he's a wonderful singer. So last year, when you and I had the opportunity to speak, we were talking about the Romeo and Juliet that was at the Met, and he was Romeo in that. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful singer. He is French, and so his language is, of course, astoundingly beautiful because, and we spoke a little about this last year, which is interesting, is that he will sing French as close to the French would pronounce the language in speech. So if you want to hear as authentic as possible French singing in French language in the operatic in French language in opera, he is the person that you're going to want to listen to. It's his use of language, because it is his native language. He excels so much in the French repertoire because he's thinking of it natively. So his interpretation and connection to the text is very deep. His voice is beautiful. He's a wonderful artist. He's an extremely consistent, just excellent singer. So I think it's absolutely, and this is a very big event. It's a big deal that he's doing Hoffmann at the Met. So I think he's going to have a massive success with it, and I think people will really love his interpretation. Yeah.
And we have two sopranos and two mezzos, but is there any one of them that actually stands out to you?
Well, they're all wonderful. I think so. Erin Morley plays Olympia. She plays the mechanical doll, and she is a Juilliard graduate. I've known her singing for a very long time and have met her a couple times. And I knew her singing even from the time she was a student at Juilliard, but she trained as a pianist to be a concert pianist. And she then transitioned to singing and got her degree from Juilliard, and then went into the Lindemann program, which is the young artist program at the Metropolitan Opera. She sings all over the world. She is an astoundingly good pianist still, and she has accompanied herself in recital. There are actually recitals that you can go watch online on YouTube where she's playing for herself, and not just easy little songs, incredible repertoire. When the pandemic happened and everything transitioned to being online, the Met did an online gala, and there is a video of her on YouTube singing an aria from La Fille du Régiment by Donizetti, and she's accompanying herself. And it's
Wow.
just brilliant. She kind of like set the internet on fire with that video. Suddenly everybody wanted to be playing for themselves online and singing and showing. Yeah, so Erin Morley's really astonishing, wonderful singer and a musician. So she's certainly definitely someone to take note of. And Priti Yende is also really wonderful. She's a South African soprano. Who I first heard probably in 2008 when she was a prize winner in a big singing competition in the Netherlands. I first heard her there, and she was 22 or 23. She was already singing extremely well, just a beautiful voice and a wonderful artist. And she has really made a wonderful career for herself. So I would say those two are sopranos to take note of. And the other singers are wonderful as well. Clementine Margain and Vasilisa Berzhanskaya, really excellent, she's singing Niklaus. And then we have Christian Van Horn, who's also a wonderful singer. He's playing the four villains in this. And he's been singing at the Met for many years. I heard him win the Metropolitan Opera competition many years ago when he was a young singer. He's a tremendous singer and artist. So I think this cast is just going to hit it out of the park. I think it's a remarkable cast, and of course, it's directed by Bartlett Sher, who's a wonderful, wonderful director. And it is a production that has been done before, but with this cast, it's going to be just remarkable, I think.
That's terrific. Yeah, that'd be a wonderful production, I know. So we're going to turn now to what the Met has been doing more and more of lately, which is doing original commissioned work.
Sure.
And on October 19th, Saturday, October 19th, they're going to have the opera Grounded, which comes from a Tony Award-winning play, and it's a little bit of Broadway coming to the Met. And the Met commissioned this to come to this. Am I correct?
Correct. That is correct. Yeah. And commissioned Janine Tesori, she's one of the most prolific female composers, but specifically female composers in American theater history, and one of, I think, the first two women to ever be commissioned to compose an opera for the Met. So she won Tony Awards. I think she's a two-time Tony Award winner for Kimberly Akimbo is hers, I believe, and also
Yes.
Fun Home. Fantastic composer, wonderful writer for the voice. She understands how voices work very well. Sometimes with contemporary composers, you wonder if they really have an understanding about how the human voice works in terms of range, tessitura, all of these other factors that have to be considered to write well. But she writes really beautifully for the voice. And this is her fourth opera. Grounded is her fourth opera, following most recently Blue, which has also had a tremendous amount of success. And I believe that it got the Music Critics Association Award for Best New Opera. So she's really, really remarkable. And the libretto for the production at the Met is by George Brandt, who wrote the play on which the opera is based. So he's the librettist for this as well. And so, I think it sounds like a fascinating work. I've seen just some clips of it on promotional videos and stuff through that the Met is releasing online. And there's a lot of extremely beautiful lyrical music in it. The singers are outstanding. So basically the plot centers around the character of Jess, this kind of tour de force role of Jess, and she's a hotshot kind of fighter pilot who unexpectedly, has an unplanned pregnancy, and that takes her out of flying and lands her in Las Vegas, where she's like operating a drone halfway around the world, and it's a real adjustment for her to do this new way of life, and struggling under a tremendous amount of pressure to be a great soldier and a perfect wife and perfect mother and all of these different factors. So I think it's a compelling story. The cast is excellent. Emily D'Angelo is really a rising star in the world of opera. She has a wonderful voice. She's one of my most favorite of the current crop of singers that are up and coming, and she's a brilliant artist. And Ben Bliss is also in this cast. He's a fantastic tenor, and also one of my favorite singers from this younger generation. I heard him sing Tamino and the Magic Flute at the Met, and it was just incredibly beautiful. So again, I think it's going to be a remarkable show. And yes, the Met has a very strong commitment to commissioning new works, and also to not only commissioning new works, but championing works that American contemporary opera that has even been in the canon for 15, 20, 25 years, but hasn't been done at the Met yet. So this is a wonderful commitment from them. And I also think it's wonderful to take someone to Le Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro, in a more traditional production where you see Rococo costuming and period kind of thing, because it gives you a sense of the history of opera as well, and that's.
Well, I assume you would include Tosca in that list?
I would, exactly. Yeah. I think it's also incredibly beautiful to see something. Tosca is. Are we moving to Tosca now, Tom? We're going to.
Well, you couldn't have written a better segue for me.
Yeah.
Yes, Tosca coming on November 23rd. Giacomo Puccini. Boy, talk about tradition,
that is really the Italian spaghetti and meatballs kind of opera. It is exactly what we think of as the big Italian romantic opera, the melodrama and the intensity of it all. Tosca is an incredible incredible opera. I saw it at the Met, I think about 10 or 12 years ago with Jonas Kaufmann, who's a star singer. He was amazing in it. And Patricia Rissette was in that production with him. She was also wonderful. It's a political thriller for those who aren't familiar with it already. It's a political thriller set in Rome in June of 1800 during the Napoleonic Wars in a time of tremendous political unrest. And the action of the opera takes place in less than 24 hours, which makes it extremely intense. The plot centers around three main characters, Floria Tosca, the diva, Floria Tosca, and her lover Mario, who's a painter and a Republican, and that's where the political part of this comes in, and the corrupt chief of police, Baron Scarpia. They just call him Scarpia, but Baron Scarpia. And Scarpia has long desired Tosca. He wants to be with Tosca, and when he suspects Cavaradossi of assisting an escaped political prisoner, he seizes the opportunity to, so to speak, kill two birds with one stone, and to manipulate Tosca into revealing the prisoner's hiding place and Cavaradossi's involvement so that Scarpia can have Tosca for himself. And of course, she does not want to be with him. She is in love with Cavaradossi. And so when Cavaradossi is captured, Scarpia offers Tosca a nightmarish bargain. She either gives herself to him or Cavaradossi is killed. And it's like you want to say, like, the end of a book report. To find out what happens, you have to go see it, right? You got to read the book. You got to go see it. So, but it is a riveting ending. Absolutely riveting. The opera's incredible and thrilling and exciting. And the music is, Puccini at its best. It's incredible.
The singer is Lisa Davidson. This is her first Met Tosca, is it not?
Absolutely. So Lisa Davidson, she's an amazing singer, has been getting more into Italian repertoire. She did Forza del Destino at the Met last season, but is primarily, I would say, was identified as more of a Strauss and Wagner singer, more German repertoire, but is definitely transitioning into more Italian rep. Incredible voice and artist. One of the greatest voices I've ever heard live. Just a huge, beautiful rolling sound and an amazing artist. So yes, she is in it. There are three sopranos who are taking on this the role at the Met this year: Alexandra Kurzak and Lisa Davidson, and then Sandra Radvanovsky, and all of them are wonderful singers. And then they are joined by three tenors and three low male voices. So for the Cavaradossis, we have Suk Jong Baek, and then Freddie De Tomaso, who's a wonderful singer, and Brian Jade. They are all great, terrific tenors. And then in the role of Scarpia, the villain, we have George Gadnids, and then Quinn Kelsey and Bryn Terfel. Bryn Terfel is a star of the opera world, and this is actually, it's quite a stir that he's coming back to the Met, because he hasn't, not because of anything against the Met. I think he's just been singing all over the world, but he finally has time to return to the Met after a decade away from it. So this is a wonderful thing that he's back. I saw him sing this role of Scarpia in the Netherlands Opera in 1999. And he was, I know, throwback. We are really,
wow.
When I was a student over there in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, he sang it there, and he was just remarkable, really incredible. So it will be wonderful. I plan on seeing him in this to see how his interpretation has also matured and ripened over these last 25 years or so. So, yeah.
Well, it's quite a series for the fall, when you have a little comedy, for Tales of Hoffmann, and then an original with Grounded, and then, winding it up with a Puccini Tosca. Well, you got it all this season.
That's right. And I would say, I wanted to add also, which I think is a nice local tie. It's great. So Stephen Osgood, who's the general director and artistic director of Chautauqua Opera and Conservatory, he's a fantastic conductor and a wonderful guy. He has conducted at the Met for many years, and he will be conducting the October 5th performance of Grounded. So for anybody from this area, from Western New York, who might happen to be in the New York City area on October 5th, you'll get to see Chautauqua Opera's very own general and artistic director conduct that new work down there.
That's terrific. That's wonderful. You get 30 seconds to give us a preview of the Hillman
30
Opera,
seconds.
and then I'll
Well,
get you,
I was-
and then I'll get you, and then I'll get you
Okay,
back.
it's great. As we were talking about also my love of traditional works, contemporary and traditional, Hillman Opera is presenting Mozart's razor-sharp comedy, Così fan tutte, on November 14th, 15th, and 17th in the Marvel Theater here on campus. It is going to be a beautiful, brand new production, beautiful traditional production with all the lavish sets and the Rococo costumes and all of that. It's really wonderful. And we have a great cast and orchestra comprised entirely of Fredonia students. So it'll be terrific.
Well, we'll come back and talk more about that
Perfect.
when the time comes.
Perfect.
Oh, wonderful. Don, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, giving us that summary. You really did a great job. You do your
Thank
homework,
you,
man.
Tom. It was a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All the Live at the Met productions begin at 1 p.m. on their respective dates. Tickets are $20 for adults, $18 for Opera House members, and $10 for students. Tickets are available at www.fredopera.org or by calling the box office at 716-679-1891. And that's it for this Goldenrod edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat. My thanks to Calabria Foti, Chris Carosa, and Don Marrazzo for being my guests on this episode. Notes from the Aisle Seat is a production of the 1891 Fredonia Opera House in Fredonia, New York. For more information on any of the Opera House's events, call the box office at 716-679-1891, visit the brand new website at www.fredopera.org, or email at operahouse@fredopera.org. Notes from the Aisle Seat is available wherever you get your podcasts and also on the Opera House YouTube channel. If you like this podcast, please consider following us by clicking the follow button on our home website at aisleseat.podbean.com and spreading the word through your social media feeds. If you have an arts event you'd like featured on the podcast, why don't you drop us a line at operahouse@fredopera.org and we'll see about featuring your event. Please try to give us a month's advance notice if possible to facilitate timely scheduling. If you have any suggestions, comments, or criticisms of the podcast, please just drop us a line at operahouse@fredopera.org. We'll be glad to receive your feedback. Our next episode will be available on Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. I'm Tom Laughlin, and until then, be safe out there and be kind to one another.